Sometimes we pray for the miracles. We wait for the breakthrough, the healing, the answered prayer. And when it doesn't come, when life feels ordinary, heavy, or quiet, we wonder if something is wrong. We read about water turning into wine, but most of us are living in seasons where it feels like the opposite, where the celebration fades and the glass feels empty, where faith isn't dramatic, it's dishes in the sink, laundry that never ends, prayers whispered into the silence. But what if the miracle was never the point? What if what we're really longing for isn't the wine, but the living water? The presence of Jesus in the middle of the mundane. The abundance that doesn't depend on circumstances. This is a podcast for seasons that feel unmiraculous, for the questions we carry quietly, for the faith that keeps showing up even when nothing changes. Welcome to Wine into Water. I'm your co-host, Jen Asplin.
And I'm your other co-host, Lydia Rosenkrantz.
We're two women who have been asking questions nobody seems to be answering. Questions about faith in seasons when life can feel unmiraculous.
And we kept having these conversations, just the two of us, and we realized we can't be the only ones who are asking these questions.
So we decided to invite you into the conversation. We're so glad you're here. Hey everyone. So our question this time is, how long can you keep going when nothing seems to be changing? And so as we were preparing, we were thinking about biblical heroes like Sarah and Abraham who waited forever. We think about the Israelites walking through the desert trying to reach their promised land. And how in our own lives, even times where we know God is working, how long can you really keep trying to do a thing when you don't see any visible progress being made? Lydia, as you think about this question, what comes up for you?
Oh, Jen, this one really hits. Um, this one hits pretty hard. And it also, I feel like when we start talking about these people who, um, 40 years they wandered in the desert, or um, thinking about Joseph in prison for 20 years, right? Um, it makes me feel very impatient when I'm like, okay, God, it's been 3 years and nothing's changed, or whatever it is. Um, but the truth is, I think that we've all experienced some period of time where we were on our knees constantly asking God to change something or bring something or do something. And it was crickets, right? And we couldn't see anything, like no change, or it might even be getting worse, right? Um, Anything that we could perceive with our senses was saying nothing's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in some ways, those times are some of the greatest tests of our faith that we have, when we can't see God doing anything and we know that he hears us. Um, we know that he hasn't forsaken us because he tells us that he will never fail us and he will never forsake us. And yet, when we look around, nothing has changed. Um, I
I'd
think,
like maybe,
go ahead.
I'd maybe even like take it a step further, which is that at some point, even the people who love you the most
begin to think you are completely bananas for
Mhm.
still
Hmm.
sticking with this thing.
Yeah.
Like I think about Noah in
Yeah.
this,
That's what I
right?
was
And
thinking
how
when you said that.
crazy, how crazy he must have looked to
Yeah.
everyone else building a boat in the desert
Yep.
for 100 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's not just our own crying out and asking for the thing, but at some point, it's the people around you, the world around you
Yeah.
starts to treat you like the crazy person.
That's right. I mean, it's like, I don't we don't necessarily know exactly how long Job suffered, but, like, his wife was like, "Just curse God and die," you know? Um, so at some point, yeah, we even have people who are encouraging us to give up on our faith, right?
Mhm.
And that's really hard when you're already struggling to keep it. And then the people around you are like, "Yeah, God doesn't care," or "God's not gonna do anything," or "Do you still believe in God? Are you still praying about this? Do you" Yeah, yes, agree. That makes it even harder.
What's something in your life that you wandered for? And what did you learn in the waiting?
Mm, good question. Um, I have been in a work situation before where, um, it was definitely not the path that I would have chosen, or, some things happened that I wouldn't have been my will. It was definitely not my will. And I kept waiting for God to step in and change things, right?
Mhm.
And it's cliche, but at the same time, some cliches actually have some truth to them, right? Is there are circumstances where we desperately want God to change the circumstance. And God's like, "Yep, not doing that. I'm going to change you instead." And I do think there are changes that God sees that the best way for me to get this out of you or to get this into you, whichever it is, or if it's both, is for you to be in a circumstance you can't control, you can't change, you can't perform your way out of, you can't buy your way out of, um, where you wait on me, and through that, I teach you who I am, I teach you who you are, I teach you that, my grace is sufficient, even when it doesn't always feel that way. Um, I think that there are some lessons that I have learned in waiting that I wouldn't have learned any other way.
Mm. Some of those seasons for me is when my faith has grown the most because there was nothing I could physically do.
Yeah.
Um, I think so between my 2 children, both my kids are IVF babies. That's fine. It's a wild story, but, like, both of them are IVF babies. And the first one was hard, but we had figured it out, and we had, like, a bunch of embryos, and so I just assumed, like, the second one would be, like, really easy, right? Um, and I think we wrestled with, "Oh god, is this, like, really how you want us to spend our money? Like, is this really what we are supposed to spend our money on?"
Sure.
And I think we got resolution on that question, and we were in a small group at the time. It's wild. I think there were, like, 7 couples, and 5 of us ended up having very serious fertility issues, and, like, 3 of the 5 of us ended up down a surrogate route. which is wild for like a random small group lunch that like those are the women God put around us in this season,
Yeah.
right? So we figured out our first one and we think the second one's going to be easy. And like we had to have done 7 or 8 cycles in between the two. Like we transferred our first embryo on my son's first birthday, and we had our second child a week after he turned 3.
Wow.
It's a lot of months in
That's
between
a
that.
lot of months.
Um, and it was a period of time where I was on my knees. Like I knew we were supposed to have a second child. That was like so clear to me. And I just like, God, where are you? Where are you in this? Um, and I think now not just about the winks he was giving me along the way, but also the way it changed me as a person to know that like there's a limit to what I am able to do and his plans will work out exactly the way his plans are supposed to work out. And I like sit here now with a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old and I'm just like I could not have planned it any better. Like I could not have had any of those other embryos, like they wouldn't be Emmy.
That's
And
right.
like Emmy is the child we were supposed to raise who will go on to do great things in this world if she can survive my house till she's 18. Um but like it gave her a fight and determination that will be used for good in this world. I have no doubt. But it like when I think about my season of waiting, like it was those 2 years where life seemed to stop with anything other than that. And it is a period of my life where my faith was fortified in ways that, like, I cannot articulate.
Yeah.
Not because I got the baby or the answer or any of that,
Right.
but because it was a season that forced me to slow down and notice him in ways that I never had before.
Sure. And I mean, and I think you've hit on something, Jen, about why God allows us to go through periods like that. It's because those are the times where we remember him. Oh, wait a minute. I'm stuck here. I can't do anything about it. God, you know,
Yeah.
um, which is not how it should be, but it is. It is when things are going perfectly and well, and we're busy and everything's wonderful. Do we stop and spend as much time with him as we do on the times where we're stuck and we're helpless and we're broken? I mean, I would say for most of us, that's no, right? Another thing that I think is, I don't know that this is like an answer to the question of how we keep going, but I think it's important. It was an important lesson that I learned, that so it's basically like what not to do in the middle of waiting. Um, so I had, um, I don't want to get too much into the story, but and I also want people to be able to think about it in um, their own light. But basically, there was a time when I was waiting, and I felt like I needed to help God along, right?
Mm.
Like, and it wasn't a bad thing that I wanted to do, and I did it, and it almost cost me the very thing that I wanted, right? He worked it out, but it taught me a lesson that I have never forgotten, and I call it creating an Ishmael. And so I go back to Sarah and Abraham. Um, and they waited a really God promised them they were gonna be the mother and father of an entire nation, right? That salvation was gonna come through them. And they waited a really long time for no child, and they're both really old, 190, something like that. I think Abraham was like 100 and Sarah was 90, right? And
A legit geriatric pregnancy.
seriously, right? Like how many of us wouldn't have given up by
Right.
that point? Sure,
Right.
Um and so Sarah takes matters into her own hands and she's like, "Well, I need to help God along here. So here, have a baby with my servant." And it ends up going horribly wrong, right? And it's still to this day has has created untold strife in our world
Yeah.
that she made this decision. But basically Ishmael was the son that he had with the servant. And so whenever I feel like I need to help God along, get ahead of him, I'm tired of waiting. I try to remember that what I don't want to do is create an Ishmael. Because once you do it, you can't undo it. And you have to live your life, the rest of your life, and potentially generations of your family beyond that have to live with whatever it was that choice that you made to help God along because you weren't willing to wait for what he had promised. And that one thing helps me when I'm in a period of waiting, um, that helps me wait because what I absolutely never, ever, ever want to do is get ahead of him and create an Ishmael.
Mm. I think that same story lives in the wandering in the desert, right?
Yeah.
Where I think God will provide in his way, in his time, right? But as humans, like I'd be lying if I said I didn't like hoard manna, right? I would go out
Would have totally wanted to hoard it.
searching for it on the seventh day, even though he's given me everything that I need, right?
Absolutely.
Or I don't know, just like not being grateful for the things that he's given while I cry out for the thing that I really want. And then like eating so much quail that I am now sick and I'm like, okay, fine. I'm never going to ask you for more again. Um, but I think there's this human tendency, right, to want the things that we don't have and to try to take things into our own hands or to ask for abundance that isn't actually abundance but is bad for us and will just make us physically
Yep.
ill. But I think there's something just so human about that.
Yeah. And I feel like I skipped over, an important piece of your story too, Jen, which is oftentimes we find at the end of the waiting that there was a really good reason for it, right? And it's very hard in the middle of it,
Mhm.
but you got Emmy, right? And you know that she was the one you were supposed to have. And I think about times where I've had to wait and I didn't. So, uh, and sometimes our waiting isn't about us, right? So, our first adoption, we were headed to get our first two little boys, and we got delayed, and it was heartbreaking. Like because we had done all this, we were ready, we were packed, we were supposed to go, we had our dates, and then they closed the country down for the whole summer. So the government just like, yeah, we're going on vacation. And I was devastated. It was just a summer, but it was like my little boys were over there
Yeah.
and they in my heart, they were mine and I wanted to go get them, right? But in the meantime, um, another family that we were traveling with was considering adopting a little boy who had a severe heart defect. And and actually, let me go. So they had already agreed to adopt one little boy, perfect, healthy little boy, right? And during the time that we were waiting, this other little boy who needed an operation quickly came available for adoption, and they decided to adopt him. And so if we had not been delayed, they would never have had the opportunity to bring him home, and he ended up having life-saving surgery here. I mean, it was severe. So, on the other side of it, it was so clear why God I mean, I'm sure there were multiple reasons that God had for having us delayed, but it was so obvious that this little boy's life was worth us waiting a summer. Nobody, our boys were fine. They were well taken care of. Um, it's so often that we can't see what the delay is about until we're on the other side. I think what frustrates me about myself is I've seen that so many times, Jen. And yet when I'm in the middle of it again, I have trouble
Remember.
believing that this time is also going to have that God has a good reason, because now it feels like, you know, maybe there's not a good reason this time. Maybe God's just being capricious, right? Or, maybe he's punishing me or whatever it is. And it's like, why am I so faithless when God is so faithful? I've seen that he always has a reason, even if he doesn't share it, every single time. There's always a purpose. Why can't I believe that in the middle of the waiting?
Yeah. There's I was thinking about it as you were telling your adoption story, but so maybe to your Ishmael story. So I couldn't stay pregnant for whatever reason, and we went down the surrogate route. And I found this lovely woman in Arizona who was going to carry our child. And in like the midst of it, I had a random friend who was like, I think you should go get a second opinion from my doctor. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I set up time with him. And in the middle, I was girls' trip to Colorado. And we're staying with the friend of one of my college friends' mothers, like a woman I've never met before, no association with her.
Okay.
And I can remember sitting at her fire pit one night and I'm talking to my friends about the surrogate and like showing them pictures. But I'm like, the weirdest thing is I can like feel in my bones that I'm going to carry a child again. And I don't understand how it's possible after like everything that we've been through. Like, I don't get it. And the friend, the woman who owns the house, like comes out as we're having this conversation and she's like listening in the background. And she finally walks over and she goes, well, what doctor are you going to get a second opinion with? And I like give her his name. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, tell him I said hello. I was like, what? What? Turns out, like, she lived in Dallas at one point in her life. They had gone through a bunch of fertility treatment, right? And like this had been her doctor. And I
Hmm.
was just like, okay.
Okay.
So, whatever. I go, he finds some stuff. He's got some pixie dust he wants to sprinkle on it, some new things that we hadn't tried before. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not letting go of the surrogate. I'm a parallel path both of them because like I just don't trust that this is going to work out and I don't want another like 2 years to go by before like we have our family complete. So I parallel path them, right? And so I get pregnant, but my problem was between that and a heartbeat like I would lose it.
Mhm.
And so we had scheduled our heartbeat um ultrasound and I was like fully prepared to get what we had gotten for years at this point that like there wasn't going to be a heartbeat. And as I'm driving to the appointment, I get the signed contract from my lawyer for the surrogate. And I'm like, this is a sign. Like she's going to carry our baby and I am like prepared to be utterly devastated again.
Oh,
And we heard Emmy's heartbeat. And so I walked away from the surrogate and like he gave me this little girl who's like God's gift to this family, despite all
sure.
the trouble she can cause. But if I think about it, like I had winks from him all along,
Yeah.
but I walked out of that season trusting him. Like when he makes a promise, he keeps a promise, even if I am like Abraham and Sarah, like, I don't understand how this could be true, Lord. Like, I hear you. and I see what is going on and like I don't understand how this could be true,
Yeah.
right? And a few years later we were listening to a sermon in church and the pastor brought out this like glass mason jar. And he's like, the thing about us is we're forgetful people. And he uses the example of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. He goes, literally, a man raised his staff
Hmm.
and they watched the waters part and they walked across ground that was not even muddy.
Yeah.
And a generation later, they've completely forgotten about it.
Yep.
Like God does these miracles in your life and we forget about them. And so he has this mason jar full of like little trinkets and he proceeds to take out each trinket and tell the story of what God did in that season of his life.
Well, that is brilliant.
And I just feel like we all need our own mason jars to remind us that we can trust him,
Yes.
that we can like, that like he's got it. And if he's made a promise, like he's going to make good on his promise. And so I think in my desert seasons, and like we've had plenty of them, Emmy's like the most life changing for me. But I wonder what we would put in our mason jar to remind us the next time that we're in the desert.
I'm gonna have to think about that, but I'm gonna do it. Um, because I need it. I need it. Um, because I think he also, it's not like we learn a lesson and then we get the same thing again. It's like, oh, well, I know how to handle this because I've already learned that lesson. It's like it's like we're in a video game and we just keep going up the next level, right? Um, and so, yeah, I can take with me what I learned from the previous lesson, but I got some new lessons coming. And it's real easy to forget what I learned on that last level when all of a sudden I'm facing the new giants, right? That
Mhm.
seem completely different.
Yeah.
Um, it's real easy to start panicking and thinking, I don't, what, God, where are you? you know,
Yeah.
um, where are you in this one?
Um, Brene Brown has this quote that like our hope is formed in the struggle. It's formed in the discomfort, in the waiting, in the obstacles. Um, because those are the times that give you what you need to prepare you for what's ahead. Um, and I think you're right. Like every level gives us some new lesson that we hadn't learned that we need for whatever is coming next.
Yep. And I'm gonna be just brutally honest here, Jen, because surely I'm not alone in this. There's got to be somebody out there who sometimes feels this way. Um, I sometimes in the waiting, I get tired. I just get exhausted. And I start to believe the lie that God really is done with me. Like he's punishing me, he's disappointed in me, he has forgotten me, he is going to leave me here forever. Um I'm going to just say that I fall in that trap sometimes. I absolutely do. And it reminds me of Elijah. He had this phenomenal battle against the prophets of Baal, right? Like he humiliated them first, right? With, God's power. And then he killed them all. He had this tremendous, tremendous win for God. But he was tired. after that. He was exhausted. He was human. And all it took was Jezebel saying, I'm going to kill you. Right? She had no power over him. Like, God had him. All it took was her saying that for him to run away and hide in a cave and be like, God, I wish I'd never been born. Can you please just kill me? Um, and God's like, you need to take a nap and eat a snack. Right? And it's like, I'm not alone in this. If Elijah could experience the same moment of doubt and say, I mean, just had this experience that no one else has ever had of God's power. And yet, literally the same day, to be like, God, I might as well just die. Just take me. Um, and God wasn't angry with his lack of faith. He wasn't disappointed. He knows that we're human. And he was just like, yep, here's a snack. And then I want you to sleep for a while, right? This journey's been too much for you.
Yeah, I also think sometimes he gives us the people that we need when we get tired, like when we just can't keep going. And I don't know if I'm like remembering this exactly right. You probably know better than I, but I
Mm,
think about like when Moses was at the mountain with his hands up and his arms got tired.
yes.
And then Aaron came and like helped him hold his arms up.
Yep.
And I think so often what the enemy does is make you feel like it's just you and you shouldn't be tired and you can't share that with anyone and you just need to go into a cave and die, right? And here's God with like, hey, sugar, take a nap, have a little snack,
Yep.
and then phone a friend.
That's right.
Because like you're not meant to carry it all on your own. Like
Mm,
sustain yourself and I'm going to give you people who will help lift up your arms when you get tired.
that's right. That is exactly right. And I mean, Jen, I'm not sure that we could have a better answer to how do you keep going when it doesn't seem to be changing, right? Is um the mason jar,
Mhm.
right? So number one is you have
Remember.
to remember who God is. You have to remember what he's done. Um that is where we get our faith. And God, how many times in the Bible does he say remember, right? I mean, a ton of times. He makes them build altars, stack some rocks because he knows they're going to forget. And so, why do we think we don't need a stack of rocks too to remember all of the good things that God has done in our life? And so, I really love that. I mean, I think that is such a practical suggestion of how to get through something is just having tangible reminders of God's goodness. And I really am going to do that. Um, I think also it's actually taking care of ourselves,
Mm.
right? It's It's eating, it's exercising, it's actually resting, um, remembering that we're human and taking care of our physical needs. And then, yes, remembering that we're not alone because that is certainly one of the enemy's number one tactics, at least with me, and I don't think I'm the only one on this,
You are not alone.
is to tell me that nobody cares. Stop the pity party, Lydia. Nobody cares. You're all by yourself. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to fix this. Um, Nobody's coming. Nobody's going to answer your text. Yeah. And it's, his tactic has always been isolation and it always will be. So yes, remembering that you have people that will stand beside you and pray for you. And, God has always been about community. I mean, he's the Trinity, right? So he's everything for him is community, and the devil's tactic is isolation. And so reaching out, asking for prayer, I think absolutely. So I
I
feel
also I also think like we get to be those people too who show
yes,
up
yes,
when it's uncomfortable and awkward and where the person doesn't want people around, like we also get to be the people who show up. Like we get to be the hands and feet. And we don't have to be perfect, right? But I think there's something to phoning a friend when you feel like you're in the cave and wanting to die, and also being the friend
Yeah.
who shows up.
Yeah. And those are the times typically that I forget about my own misery, is when I'm totally with someone else who's suffering and I'm just there for them. Um, and so no doubt that's God's intention for us.
I agree.
Hmm.
Should we pray over our audience before we leave?
Definitely.
You want to do it this time?
Sure. Lord, thank you. Um, thank you for the reminders that you are always with us, that you will never leave us, never fail us, never forsake us. And Lord, you have a purpose in every season of waiting that we have had to walk through and will walk through. Thank you for reminding us that we also don't have to do it alone, that you've created us for community and that we can call on each other, and then we also can make sure we're there for each other. Lord, help us and help our audience, God, in the middle of waiting. Help them not to create an Ishmael that they will regret and have to deal with for the rest of their lives, that wouldn't have to be there if we just remembered how faithful you are and that you're there and that you have a purpose and a plan. And I just ask, Lord, that you would protect all of our audience members until we can come back together again. In Jesus' name we ask this. Amen.
Amen.